Hi, this is Lainey from Camp Joy Farms. I'm coming to you this evening just to talk to you a little bit about something that I feel is kind of important. I know that on a lot of YouTube channels, you get to know the people. You get to see their whole lives, their families. You get to know their spouses, their children, and things like that. My children are older, and I have really young grandchildren, so I'll leave it up to them when they want to ever be on my channel. I don't have any little kids still at home like some of the homesteaders do, so mine are older. I'll give them that choice. As far as my husband goes, I wanted to discuss that with you tonight because it's a very important part of my life, as a matter of fact. Not just because he's my husband, but because of what has happened. That is part of our story for Camp Joy Farms. And I wanted to go ahead now, while I'm early in my channel, and discuss that because this has been a very major year for us. Everybody was so excited to end 2020 because 2020 just seemed to be such a depressing, bad year for America and for the world and for many people, especially those that got sick from COVID or lost family members or things like that. So we were like everyone else. We were excited when 2020 rolled out and 2021 rolled in. What we didn't know was that 2021 would be a very challenging year for us. On January 22nd of this year, my husband collapsed on our driveway and had a massive brain bleed stroke. And right then and there, as anyone knows who goes through an injury, a death, a sickness, anything shocking like that, is your life changes that day. It is never the same again. And that's been the way this whole year has been. It's been a challenging year, but I also want to say right up front before I even get started talking about it, that it's been a year of grace. It's been a year of learning, a year of patience, just a year of growing in my own faith and in our marriage, so it's not all bad, but it has been a challenging year, and it's definitely affected how Camp Joy Farms is going to operate. And Camp Joy Farms is going to even get off the ground and grow and all because I have a balancing act I have to deal with between my husband's needing me and the help that I have to give him and just my heart that wants to start this business. And it's a juggling act, and I've just learned to sit back and kind of let God guide it. When it's time to do something, I move forward a few steps. Sometimes I'm pretty much let known that I need to stop and deal with other things, and I do that too. It's hard to explain. It might not be hard to explain to people that have gone through things like this, but it's kind of hard to explain sometimes what's going through my mind. But I'm going to try that tonight. He was a Friday evening. I was cooking. He was helping me cook. We were babysitting our 2-year-old grandson, and he just walked outside for a few minutes. I really didn't think anything about it. He didn't come back to help what he was cooking with, so I kind of wondered where he was, but I wasn't worried. And luckily, our son, who was 18 at the time, who still lived at home, drove up from work and found him in the driveway. So that just kicked off, a series of events that you go through when things like that happen. We called 911, the ambulance had to come. We live kind of rural. It took a while for it to get here. It was very stressful. They took him to a hospital about 20 miles away. Luckily, that hospital was linked in through Zoom and technology with Tulane Medical Center in New Orleans. And when they discovered that it wasn't just a clot stroke, I have found out that there's different types of strokes. It wasn't a clot stroke, it was a brain bleed stroke. And once they saw that on the CAT scans and everything, Tulane wanted him down there immediately. So, 1 minute you're at home, the next minute you're at a hospital, the next minute you're behind an ambulance going down the interstate to New Orleans. And we live about 60, maybe 70 miles from New Orleans. And it's not somewhere that we go a lot, but, it's close enough that we go there sometimes, but it's still like another world to be in New Orleans as opposed to being out here in our quiet place where we live. So it was just very shocking. We followed the ambulance down there and were immediately told to go home. You can't be here. New Orleans had locked down the hospitals because of COVID, and they would not let us even stand on the sidewalk, stand in a hallway or anything. We were told, just go get a hotel and we'll let you know if he crashes. And that was surreal. I've always been the type of person, if someone, a parent or someone, anyone goes in the hospital, someone needs to be there with them. Someone needs to stay with them, because I feel like a family member is just necessary to be there to work between the doctor and the patient, to answer questions. Patients can't always tell you or answer things, and I've just always felt like someone needs to be there, and I've always tried to do that when my parents were in the hospital or things like that. And literally, after some paperwork, they kicked us out and told us to either go to a hotel or go home. So for the next 5 days, we could not see him. He had brain surgery about 30 hours later to remove some of the clots that had come from the brain bleed that were interfering in his progress. So he had that surgery without us there. No one could be there. And finally, after the 5th day, just unexpectedly, New Orleans lifted that and was allowing 1 visitor per person during certain hours of the day. And so we were finally able to go in to see him. But anyway, he was down in New Orleans for 11 days, and then he was transferred to rehab hospital in Baton Rouge, and he was there for 30 days. And they only let him have 1 designated visitor for the entire stay. And I could be there. Of course, I was the visitor. I could be there, but I could only be there, during the daytime. You had to go home in the evenings, and our children could not go see him for a whole month. So he had the stroke on January 22nd. He was finally able to come home from the rehab hospital to our house on March 2nd. So it was a 41-day experience. And of course, that's never the end when you have a stroke. He immediately, the very next day, started outpatient therapy, and that went on for 8 months. We just finished up with his outpatient therapy at the end of October. And when I say finished up, really, we just stopped. It got to the point where the therapist had reached what they thought was the maximum recovery that he could achieve. He had some Botox shots and different things to try to help his muscles. He never really regained the use of his right arm, hardly at all. He really can't do much with it. His right leg, thank goodness, he did get some recovery in. So he is able to walk now with a cane. I stay right with him. I don't let him go walking by himself or anything like that. I stay right with him because he's still a fall risk. But he did get that mobility back to move his leg and things like that. But, and this is the challenge that, I'm facing in trying to start a farming business and juggle this. And I'll explain why I'm going ahead with it in just a moment. But I just wanted to explain where he was and why you won't see him being my partner in action out in the farm. He is my partner in life, and he supports me doing this, and he wants me to do this. So that part is no problem, but he just won't actually be able to help me do the manual labor that it takes to do a gardening business. But anyway, it has affected him greatly. Physically, it has really impacted him. He can't transfer from chair to wheelchair or get up by himself to get his cane to walk. He can't do any of that right now. He just has no strength in that right arm to help him brace. His right leg really only helps him when he's actually up and starts moving. He can't really do anything to put weight on it or anything. It's just this process. And sometimes when those things happen, your good side that didn't go paralyzed during the stroke, it's hard sometimes for that side to keep up because you don't get to use it as much as you used to either. And so that's kind of what I'm fighting now, is just trying to get him to walk more and do things like that, so that left side doesn't start getting atrophied kind of. So anyway, he's a right-handed person, but he's had to learn to eat with his left hand. If he writes anything, he writes it with his left hand. And those kind of things you can compensate for, you can get along. But what also happened with his stroke, because it was a very bad stroke, is it left him cognitively affected. It left him with a word that I had never really heard in my life, but now I say it just about every day. But it left him with aphasia, and what that means is your brain just doesn't work right, I guess, like it used to work. Now, he might know exactly, his brain knows what he wants to say or something like that, but what comes out his mouth is not what he's really saying. So there's a lot of interpretation that has to go on. I call it the what you're talking about Willis moment, where if everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that, I know that he knows, and he gets frustrated because he thinks he's saying what he means, but that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing something completely different. And that's what aphasia is. So I have to, without babying him, without trying to always finish his sentences or things like that, with letting him try, I have to step back also and watch his motions and things like that and try to figure out what it is he needs, what it is he wants. Very hard to go through drive-thrus, very hard to pull up at a Sonic and order, because he can see the picture of what he wants, but he cannot tell you exactly what it is. And, that's just life. That's life after a stroke. That's life with a person who they call Richard's severe global aphasia. That's what his doctors have categorized it in their paperwork. And so sometimes aphasia can fade over time, but his has not. And I don't get good prognosis that it will. So this might be a long-term thing. And, God prepares you for things in your life. I'd never heard of what aphasia was. It meant nothing to me, even when I heard it, when Richard developed it, that's when I started even thinking about it. But in my life experience, though, I had worked with a man for many, many years who had that. We just didn't have a word for it back then. They might have had one, but I didn't know it. And he was a part owner of a store, and my father owned the other part of the store, and it was a sporting goods business. And I worked there for many, many years with Mr. Billy, and he had that issue, but I didn't realize what it was called. But that experience of working with him and being with him 20-something years with his stroke has prepared me for this, because it's not shocking to me. I do kind of, I guess, have more patience with it maybe than some people would, because I was so used to Mr. Bill and just letting him have the time he needed to say what he needed to say. So I just count that as a blessing that I knew him and that I worked with him, because it has definitely helped me with my husband. That's really all I can say about his condition. Life is a challenge. He needs my help with everything. So that's my first priority. The reason that I wanted to do this video, though, is because I'm fixing to start building my greenhouse. It may take a while. It's not going to be your build like I've seen some videos of, which are wonderful, where, it's a project, you get started, you work on it, finish it. That's probably not going to be how this goes, because I will need some help. I'll need a lot of help, and I do have some people that are willing to help me, and I'm so appreciative of that. But it'll be, even with help, I have to stop. I can only do things at certain times. And unless some big, huge crew shows up, I'm needed out there. So I have to juggle it back and forth. And it's funny because my husband, that was his job in life, is he was a project superintendent for a company, and they operated a job site just outside the gates of a chemical plant. And he was the project manager, the site manager, I guess you would say, for that job site outside of the chemical plant. And they did things like they built levees, drainage, ponds. They managed the byproduct that was kicked out by the chemical plant. They managed all of that to keep it out of wastewater and things like that. But they also, just to stay busy and to keep the crews all busy all the time, they bid on other jobs and other plants. And they poured driveways and concrete. And Just did anything you could do. That was constantly squaring off things and measuring things with strings and setting plumb lines and getting dirt and all, foundations for things level. And I really could use him for this. I really could use him. And he might be sitting out there and he might be in the background of some of my videos. If it was just a physical thing and he couldn't help me, that would be okay. But he could sit there and tell us how to do it or tell me what I need to do. But he can't exactly do that with the global aphasia. It's hard for him to express what he's trying to tell me. It's hard for him to tell me, you're not doing this right. You need to pull the string this way or do this or do that. And, he has the knowledge up there. It's just hard for the communication. But I am blessed. My brother-in-law is supposed to come next week, weather permitting, and we're going to go ahead and pull the string lines to measure out the greenhouse. I'm going to try to show him all that I have on it so that he'll understand what we're building and everything. I have the greenhouse. It's been sitting here since April. I just need to get it started. Our other friend, as I said before, is coming with a skid steer and with an auger to drill the holes in our ground because our ground is so firm. And after that, my brother-in-law was going to come back and we're going to try to start putting the greenhouse up. But it's a process, and it may not get done in a week or two, and that's okay. My goal is to kind of have it done by mid-January, but I know between now and then it could get cold. It could have some really bad weather and things like that. So who knows what weather does, in the wintertime. So if we could get it done faster, we will. But it's just a process, and they understand that, and they know. And we may end up with some more help, and it may happen. So I'm really not worried about it. It will happen when it happens. But that's why I wanted to let you know, because you'll see other people coming in to help me, and I want to acknowledge them. But on most homestead things, most gardening things, you kind of know where the husband is, and things like that, or where the family members are. And I want people to understand what's going on with that. The reason, it might think I'm crazy to go ahead and start this farming business this year, but I'm not. It's a lot of thought has gone into it. I have wanted to do this for several years. Even when I was working a full-time job, I thought about it 24 hours a day. I did a lot of research. I decided, instead of doing any type of market gardening or farming back then, I would just start my own garden, just your regular garden for our family. I love putting up food and things like that. So I got started just with my spring garden in 2020, and it came out really good. I was proud of it. I put in a fall garden that fall. It did all right. It wasn't as good as my spring garden, but I also ran drip tape during my spring garden, and I didn't run it for any garden since then. And I've noticed they haven't done near as well as when I ran my drip tape. So I definitely am going to go back with that this year. Richard had already gotten out there right before his stroke in early January, and we have a tractor, and he had already gotten out there and disked up our gardens, and he had rowed them up and even planted 2 rows of potatoes in his garden. He was going to have a big garden on one side of our property and mine's on the other, and we were just probably going to end up kind of competing with each other just out of fun. But he had already disked up both gardens, planted the potatoes, and we were just getting ready for spring when this happened. And at first I thought, man, he did all that work and we're not even going to have gardens this year. There's just no way. I was overwhelmed, at first. And then though, as time went on, I had a lot of time to do absolutely nothing when I was sitting over at his rehab hospital in the waiting room. And so they would take him to therapy, but I would have to stay in his room, and I couldn't go anywhere else in the hospital because of the restrictions they had. So I sat there during the day, and, next thing you know, I'm looking at other books and garden catalogs, and, and I just thought, well, I'll just go forward with planning a spring garden, and if I'm able, fine. If I'm not, fine. And then after he got home, I thought, well, once he's home, there's no way, I can't do it. But I ended up, people come over, our kids helped, and I was able to go outside some evenings, and I thought, well, I'll just plant one row of this or one row of that, and and then it'd be time to go back in the house. And I did that little by little, and the next thing you know, I had all kind of stuff planted. And even then, though, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do anything with it. I was just like, you know what, this may end up a mess of weeds, but I'm just going to see. And it did end up kind of weedy towards the end because I couldn't give it the time I needed to do a lot of the weeding or things like that. But I ended up getting plenty of produce out of it. Gardens are so wonderful because you can just think they're not beautiful and they're terrible or they're getting weeds and all, and they just churn out so much food that really it's such a blessing. And so I just kept on going, and so I was able this spring to have a spring garden, and I appreciated it. And I kind of just thought to myself, you know what, there's never a great time for anyone. There's always something going on, whether it's work or children or finances or whatever. There's never a great time to start a business for anyone. But for us, for once in our lives, we're both here. I'm home all day. I've always worked and I've always done things like that, but I was home all day and with him. And even if I can't give it the many hours that I'd love to give it, I can still in and out all day long, go check it. It's not like I'm gone all day to a job and I only have the evenings. I'm here, so I can go in and out and do things. And we're just going to move forward. I've got a plan. I'm kind of a visual person. When I do things, I do graphics of the gardens that I'm going to plant. I tweak things. I work things. I spend the evenings kind of tweaking it and thinking, why was I thinking this when I planned it this way? And I move things around. But that's okay. That's just how I do things. And I have a visual poster I made of my gardens and farm that I'm going to show you in another video, because it's hard for me when I'm watching other videos, even if they get real descriptive about their property, sometimes you just can't figure out how it's laid out or where they're at when they're talking to you. And so I don't have a drone, but I bought a $1 trifold poster at the Dollar Tree, and I just painted a poster. And so I'm going to go over it on one of the next few videos with you to let you know where I'm working and how everything's laid out so that you'll understand what I'm doing. But anyway, I've just decided to move forward. Financially, we're doing okay and we're fine. But when something like this happens, we're blessed, let me say, first of all, because he does have long-term disability. And we're very blessed also because the doctors and all told me really quick to go ahead and apply for Social Security, that he would not be going back to work, and that they, were going to write that in the paperwork that this patient was not going to go back to work. And it became very apparent to me that that was the case. So I did all the Social Security paperwork and everything. And I can honestly say I dreaded it because I had heard so many stories about dealing with government agencies, and everybody I talked to told me that we would probably be denied and have to appeal and things like that. And if that's the process, that's the process. I was prepared for it mentally, but I was just dreading it because you have so much paperwork to do when things like this happen, and you have so many people sending you things, and you have to read every detail, or you can really get in a bind with some of it. So I was just dreading dealing with it, but I can honestly say everybody that I dealt with Social Security Administration was wonderful. They answered my questions. They were very, very kind to me. One lady even just called here and went over stuff with me so that I wouldn't have to spend the time sending things back in and all. So, and then they approved him in 60 days with no appeal, and approved him for 7 years before he even has to have a review of his case again. So that's a load off of my mind. However, when you do go from working full-time and earning a good salary, and we were blessed because my husband earned a really good salary, but when you go from that to Social Security long-term disability, it pretty much cuts your salary in half. That's supposed to be 60% of your salary, but it's only 60% of a 40-hour work week. And this is getting in the weeds a little bit, but I just want people to understand that, my husband always had overtime on his check. It's just something that's been there for 15 or 20 years, so it becomes just part of what you make. And when all of a sudden that's just discarded and they only look at the 40-hour work week and they base your long-term disability off of that, and then they minus out whatever you're getting for Social Security, you're not getting a huge chunk for long-term disability. And then you're getting your Social Security, and altogether you're at half your salary or less. Sometimes it actually has worked out as less for us. So that's a big shock. We were blessed that we didn't have a lot of debt. Thank goodness. We do have, some house note and things like that, but luckily we didn't have a lot of debts. And so we're blessed that way. However, we're not that old. We're not even 60, neither one of us. And we've got a lot of life ahead, hopefully. And if you want to do extra things and more, things, a trip every blue moon, or just to be able to go to the store and buy whatever groceries you need to stock up and do things, you can't always just make it on Social Security and things like that. And I'm young still, and so it's like I want to make money. I want to have an occupation. I want to have something to do, but I can't go out in the world anymore and really do that so much because he needs me. And I think it's silly for me to go out and work only to make money to pay home health or something. And I don't want to do that anyway. This is our life. He and I are together almost 24 hours a day, every day of the week, all the time. I've had a couple occasions lately where I was able to have 2 hours by myself one night, and Thanksgiving evening, I had 2 hours by myself to run to a family thing because other people sat with Richard. But, we're together all the time, and that's the way it's going to be. And that's all right. I love it. And we're managing. He's happy. We laugh. He can talk enough to where we can have conversations. It's just not like it used to be. And then there are other times when he just cannot express what he's wanting to say. But between the two of us, we manage, and we, your husband, your spouse, so it's fine. And we're very, very blessed. So, but financially, I wanted to go ahead and start the business, and this YouTube channel is part of that business plan. It'd be nice to just focus on the farm and not even to have to focus on anything else. But I have a creative side to me. I love doing things like this. I need outlets for my energy and for my talents, I guess you would say. I used to have a prepping little site on Twitter. I had a prepping site on called Prep Food Now on Getter and Twitter. I don't do those anymore, but it's just that part of me that likes to interact and share information. So this helps me, and he is supportive of me doing this. He's telling me to go ahead and do this. So, I'm just stepping out in faith. But financially, if I can build my subscribers and build my base of people, and one day YouTube has its rules of how many you have to have about 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 viewing hours before they'll even consider you to be monetary. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start with one video and one subscriber, and you have to build from there. So if I don't just get started, I will never get there. If I don't start now to do something that may take me a year or so to build, then I won't ever get there. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to just begin. And really and truly, there is no good time. There's just now. We have now. That's all we have. I'll be honest with you. We're okay. This is not the worst thing my husband and I have ever had to deal with. That's another story for another day. I'm not going to go talk about it really right now. But this is not the worst thing we've ever dealt with. This is not the saddest part of our life. We've been through other things. And we'll be okay with this. And he knows it, and I know it. And we'll get through it. And we have a lot of people that love us. We have a lot of support. We have good children. We have wonderful great grandchildren, as in wonderful grandchildren. And it'll be okay. And Camp Joy Farms will grow and hopefully succeed. It just may grow at a little bit slower pace than someone that really hit the ground running. I have to just balance my time. Time has become very precious to me. I'm doing this video right now because he's watching a football game with my son up front, and it's just allowing me a few minutes to come back here and handle this. So if you'll have patience with me, and if you'll just support my channel and recommend it to people, I've got a lot of things coming out, even some funny, humorous things that I'd love to do. I write down things, I write down ideas. Sometimes I can't go to sleep at night because I have a lot of ideas. So there's a lot of content coming. I hope you'll support my channel, support Camp Joy Farms, and just hit the like button. Apparently that means a lot to YouTube. I'm getting to know all these things, but apparently, you know, the more likes, the more subscribers, and even comments and interaction, they look at all that to see if you're worthy at some point to be monetized. And, you know, if you're going to do this, why not try to be monetized if you can? But it's a thing that I'm learning, and I just appreciate your patience. I thank you for everything, and I hope you enjoy this channel, and just check with me all the time. Turn on your notifications, and anytime I post anything, you'll be able to see it. Y'all have a great rest of the weekend, and I appreciate you. Thank you.